everyone, kia ora koutou, nau mai, haere mai, and welcome back to Showy Ovaries, a podcast where I, basic busybody Penny Ashton, get all up in people's business about their inner workings and probe many a total stranger about their menopause journeys so I might have an idea of what is happening to me and others in midlife when our proud chronification begins. A quick reminder, as always, that I am not a doctor. Don't go quoting me on your medical insurance or ACC claims unless you have pulled a muscle from laughing oh so hard at my hilarious comedy. But if you do need actual medical advice from an actual medical professional, then please do start there and with your GP or make an appointment with a menopause clinic and then go from there. Today's guest, though, is a doctor, and not just any doctor, she's Doctor Who. No, it's not Jodie Whittaker, but it is Dr. Huhana Hickey of Ngāti Tahinga, who is a proud bearer of a PhD, which she says she got mainly to prove to those who told her that she wouldn't amount to anything, that they were idiots, and because she's a massive Whovian and Trekkie. Not only does she have a PhD, but also a Bachelor of Laws, a Bachelor of Social Science, a Master's in Laws with distinction, and her PhD in Law and Tikanga Māori. Not bad for a school dropout who was told she was mentally defective. That's what they said about. Oh my God. Anyway, it's quite long, so just here we go again. From being adopted out at 3 days old to having her cultural identities either stripped from her or attempted to be beaten out of her at school, Doctor Who has risen above it all to be a champion fighter. Once she met her birth parents, she began the healing knowledge of knowing what her whakapapa was, that she was a proud Māori, Aboriginal, Sami, and Navajo. She's an extremely active community advocate for the disabled and drug reform around disability. She's been in a wheelchair since 1996, but only got a diagnosis for her ongoing chronic issues in 2010 as a rare form of multiple sclerosis. She was the first solicitor for Auckland Disability Law and is the first openly disabled New Zealand Housing Board member. She's a claimant in the Abuse and Care Inquiry and is basically just a kick-ass woman, wife and mother of two beautiful lads, with a fierce intellect who is daily sticking it to any injustice that she sees. So please give a warm, showy ovarian welcome after that very long introduction, and there's still more to come, to the wahine tour that is Doctor Who. Hey, kia ora. Hello.
Kia ora.
I feel like I have to go ding, 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 ding.
Oh, dude.
Anyway, welcome. How are you doing?
Well, fighting infections, but I'm doing good.
Oh, fighting infections. What, you don't mind me asking? Is it just sort of like, is that the mask mandate coming away? And
well, it is actually, because I can't leave the house now until I can get my immunity back up.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is. We can't risk it. It's too dangerous out there for us.
Yeah. Have you had COVID?
Well, I got COVID in July.
Oh, right. And how was it?
Well, I ended up in the zero neg ward at the hospital because I had COVID-induced pneumonitis, and that is in the throat. So it's an inflammation of the bronchioli. And that seems to have not gone away, and there seems to be a few other little things happening. So, it's another new part of the adventure for the next phase of my life, which is supposed to be the last phase.
Right.
I just don't want it to be the last for a wee while.
No, I'm not surprised. Yeah, and this is the face of removing the mask mandates and things like that, isn't it?
Yeah. Exactly.
Which you've been quite active about opposing on the Twitter space.
Well, it just doesn't make sense. I come from a health background. I come from the time when nurses had to have vaccinations because that was part of your job.
I know, right?
If you didn't have them, because you deal with diseases. So,
yeah, that was pretty astonishing to me, the health professionals that dropped out because of it.
That shocked me, actually, because I've never, ever heard, because it's mandated. You don't nurse if you don't get jabbed.
Yeah, right.
Jabs.
Yeah.
Because you have to. It's the only way you can nurse safely.
Yeah.
And yes, vaccine injuries do exist. And yes, out of 5 million people, we've had one vaccine death. Not a nice thing to happen, but those are good odds.
Yeah, and that's it. And the thing is, when you vaccinate an entire nation, then people die every day, and that extrapolation out, which you understand because it's emotional and things like that. But yes. It's like, and also the fact things like around the myocarditis and pericarditis was that it's actually much more common as a side effect of COVID. Yes. So that's that's the thing. Everybody was talking about it's either the jab or nothing, but no, it was either jab or COVID.
Well, also for some people who got COVID got myocarditis. I know of 2 cases, because I was involved in COVID research, 2 cases actually where they got frontal lobe dementia. And one woman was near the completion of her PhD in law, has now had to move back in with her ex-husband and daughter because she can no longer function very well. And she's only in her 30s.
Oh, that's tragic.
Or
And
40s,
she wasn't vaccinated?
No. Well, I think it was in the early, because we researched 2020, 2021.
Right, okay.
So they could have been partially vaccinated or weren't unvaccinated. So, and that's the difference when I got COVID, is I wouldn't have survived if I'd got it in 2020. So for that, I'm grateful.
Yeah.
Because I'm alive today and I'm here to cause more trouble for a bit longer. You can't kill weeds. And I love being a weed.
Okay. That's embracing that's one thing I look at your story and thought tenacity, but I have longer introductions for you because you're so interesting. So we might as well get onto that and then we can get into all of it. So here we go. Dr. Huhana Hickey was born prematurely in 1962 and was adopted out at 3 days old to, and I quote, a lovely couple, the typical working class family who held values I both admired and simultaneously struggled to live by. She had her ethnic identity expunged from her birth certificate and so grew up thinking that she was Pākehā, even though never feeling completely connected to that concept. She grew up in Taranaki and was exposed from a young age to dioxin, also used in Agent Orange, that was sprayed on farms until 1965. This has had a long-lasting health repercussion, though ACC refuses to pay out on this nonsensically. She initially started training as a nurse, which is why you know about all of that, but her chronic pain made continuing in that difficult, and so she embarked on her impressive academic studies. She struggled for years to get a diagnosis of MS, even being told it must be psychological because, and I quote, Maoris don't get MS. I said Maoris like that because I feel like they would have said it like that. Part of her work in human rights law has been based on her own life experiences of discrimination, abuse, and just a complete lack of inclusion in society. In fact, her pain has kept her back from as much advocacy as she would like of late, which was exacerbated by the failure to get medicinal law reform around cannabis through in the last election's referendum, which was so annoying, thereby rendering her most effective treatment prohibitively expensive. Despite all of these challenges, Dr. Huhana has a smile as wide as my laptop screen and is proudly wearing her moko kauai, which reflects all of her various strands of heritage in ink on her face. So one more time, please welcome the very fabulous Dr. Huhana Hickey. Kia ora. Hello. Again. Right, so how do you like hearing? Do you ever sit down and just think of all of that in one space and think, fuck yeah, I did all that?
I try not to hear it, actually. I don't feel comfortable. I really don't like talking about me and my personal life, but I don't mind talking about generally things.
You see, that's the focus of my podcast, right? It's all about you, love. So you don't. Is that like an internal saboteur, or you just feel like there's other work to be done? Or
I know what it is. It's triggered from the age of 3 when you struggle with abuse and people putting you down. I mean, I was never skinny enough. I was never tall enough. I wasn't white enough. I was a black baby. I was in the sun all the time and I was dark, but I was never the right one, and I was different. And
your parents and stuff were told that you were mentally defective?
Well, my birth papers, I saw them actually. My dad was a social worker, and before computers, he got me in at 18 to help do the filing and to sort out the filing system. And I got there and I wish I'd just done the naughty and stole my file, actually. I was too scared, and they didn't have photocopiers back then. They had carbon copiers. And, that's how long ago it was. I'm really dinosaur period
back in 1896.
Going back with the old typewriters, which it was literally. And I found my file. And I actually found, and it had imbecile and idiot on it. But I was born a month preem, and in 1962, that was deemed to be very premature compared to today. And so I think they made assumptions based on what they thought was going to happen, being born early like that. But didn't happen. In fact, apparently, I don't know what this means, but apparently my IQ's dropped a little. I think that's an age thing. I don't even know. I know that if you get under 70, that you're deemed to be learning disabled. But I know many that are under 70 who could vote more cleverly than many non-disabled because they are capable of a lot of things. You just put it in the language that they're capable of. And, so apparently my IQ last time, and it was done by a friend who's a clinical psychologist, and she was developing an indigenous IQ test because the European one often biased against indigenous peoples, different worlds.
How shocking.
How unusual.
Yeah. Like the BMI, same thing. Yeah.
And so what happened is she found it came to about 157 or something. And she said, oh, it's dropped. I think you were 161 one other time. And I'm like, oh, okay, is that good? She says, oh, nah, but she was my mate, so I don't know. But I think I've had a look, and I think it's supposed to be pretty good. But all it means to me is that I wasn't as dumb as they had led me out to believe I was.
No, and isn't this just like one doctor sitting down writing a couple of words in 1962 can have such lasting repercussions on your sense of self?
How does one assess a baby's intellect?
I know. You can assess
their milestones, and unless you've got a visual like Down syndrome and that, and even then they're finding, because there was recently someone with Down syndrome who's just got a degree, a proper degree.
Fantastic.
And the reason for that is that with support, they're quite capable people. And in fact, you find that if they learn sign language earlier than they learn verbal language, it's just that their wiring is different.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So, we don't know a lot about the brain, but we make assumptions that we know, and we tend to compartmentalize and limit people based on what we know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the milestones things is really big. Like, because I am epileptic, as many listeners will know, I've mentioned it every episode practically. And there is something called fetal anticonvulsant syndrome, which is, so people taking sodium valproate, and I like to say this as much as possible because it's still not widely known, which is crazy, that women taking that. But and they had these children that it was because of that, those milestones, those markers that they weren't hitting, that they were like, there's something wrong, and medical, oh no, everything's fine, until they finally figured out the diagnosis. Because as you know, diagnosis is everything, isn't it?
And that's it. For me it was once, and then I found out that doctors actually often can't make a diagnosis. And if they can't
I've discovered that too.
They don't know what to do with you, they tend to dismiss you. And so, you get many years where they will try to justify their non-diagnosis or their inability to properly diagnose or treat. And if you're a woman, they will always put it down to a psychological, a mental health issue. And it's a bit like, that old menopause and the whole hysteria issue, and why they used to give women hysterectomies simply when they were hysterical, because our emotions sit in our wombs.
Yes, and they travel around our body as well, apparently. That was a good one.
I'm pretty sure if we kicked a guy in the nuts, his emotions would come out too. But, they just never really think about it like that, do they?
And also, imagine if they just started chopping their dicks off whenever they had an issue.
Why not they? I mean, it might turn them into something a little bit more empathetic towards a few things.
Right. Yes, and obviously, even though I hate that not all men stuff, but like my husband's very sweet. Yeah, but like that not all men thing is infuriating. But anyway, so now I know you don't like it, but I'm going to do it, Doctor Who. I'm going to talk about you, and you have to talk about yourself. So my first question that I ask everybody is, what has your relationship been like with your body through your life, and what journey has it been on?
Fraught and hateful for many years. I mean, because I was adopted, I didn't look like any of the whānau. And I'm short. Now, my Sami side, my nanny was a shorty, my birth nanny. My mother was short. All the women are short and the men are tall. But being Aboriginal, they're pretty short too. Sami are very short. So I'm short. I'm 5'2". I think my mother was 4'9".
Wow.
And I remember looking over and thinking, gosh, she's short. And I've never seen myself that short. But, I'm short. In fact, but when I was a kid, I was a skinny little kid. But, and I exercised a lot, but I always felt pain, and I always had trouble with lungs and didn't know why, because the family never took me to the doctor. I mean, I had my appendix one time burst and they didn't believe me. And it was just about burst by the time I got to the hospital, because they thought I was faking the pain. And I'd lived in pain my whole life, but I couldn't tell people my pain because they didn't believe. My breathing issue, I mean, I coughed up blood as a kid. We didn't know why.
Do you think it's the dioxin, or is that?
No, it was chronic bronchitis. And I always had lung issues as a kid. And I never smoked, but my birth mother and my adoptive mum both smoked. So the latest diagnosis is that pneumonitis could be emphysema based on getting COVID and then getting that. And they go, have you smoked? And I'm going, no, I don't smoke. I don't even smoke because I don't smoke. I don't like it.
My mother smoked when she was pregnant with me, but not with my older sister. So that's interesting. But I have asthma, and my sister doesn't.
And me too.
So, Yeah.
And it's interesting. We don't, I don't put blame on them. It was a time. They were told they were going to be
Yes.
glamorous and it keeps you skinny. I think Mum wanted me
Yes.
to smoke, so I could be skinny when I was a teenager. But
Oh my
yeah, I
God,
know.
that's
I think
nuts.
she would have
Yeah,
secretly
right.
loved it if I stole some of her cigarettes. But, I mean, at 14, then I was raped and I lost. I mean, I'd been abused by an uncle from the age of 3.
Oh, fucking
And
hell.
it was my mum's brother. He was an arsehole, I'll be
I'd
honest.
say so. Yeah, fair
He was my
enough.
godfather. And I remember him saying to me, you're not of our blood and I can do what I like to you and I will. And he did. And he used to humiliate me publicly. We'd go to Christmas do or whatever and they'd all get drunk. And that's why I hate alcohol with a vengeance too. But I know it's legal and always will be. But there's a bit of hypocrisy in our country on that. But I remember it because he used to pull me over his shoulder, pull my pants down, and then draw a funny face on it, and then laugh, carry me around. And, it wasn't funny. It was embarrassing,
No.
humiliating. So, I was always shy, but I always watched out for kids that at school that were the underdog to look out for
Right.
them, look after them a bit.
Oh, right.
Then when I was 14, I was raped. Dad had had 3 strokes a month earlier. And I was just walking home. I think I'd been to town. I got Dad something because he was coming home the next day. And I'd gone out and bought him a present. And I was walking home and I got shoved into a car. And he took me off in the country area and anyway raped me and stuff. And I drew a picture of him, actually, the police. And they caught him that night. And they'd taken me. I can't go to car road shows. I can't go to those speed racing venues because they took me there to look for him because he'd mentioned about speed racing. Apparently he was there, but I can't handle the noise, can't handle the smell, and I can't handle, and that's another reason I don't like alcohol is because he stunk of beer.
Yeah, right.
And I don't, anybody come near me with alcohol and I immediately get trauma on their breath.
Did he get convicted?
Yes, he got 7 years. And in 1977, that was rare.
Yeah.
There was no rape crisis. There was no women's centre. There was no support, no victim support, nothing. I remember the male doctor removing my clothes. So I felt humiliated. And you become more humiliated. He took my undies and I was shy. Yeah. I remember when I was 10 on a trampoline and didn't realise I had developed and my boy cousins were watching me and my auntie and mum pulled me off the trampoline and told me, you're not going back on that. So I was always very shy. I was always taught to be
And that's
ashamed.
so shit, isn't it? You're not allowed to have fun because you have become a sexual object against all of your...
I felt ashamed of my body. I didn't like it. What are these things growing? These are horrible. And I really struggled with my identity as a female then because I didn't know my sexuality. I didn't even know what a lesbian was. I thought they were Leslies because that was their name, Logic. But, because I'm Irish Roman Catholic, really strict religious upbringing with the cross and the saints and everything else. And, different saints had different prayers for different things. And so I had absolutely no idea of sex or any of that. Even though I'd been abused, I still didn't know. And it was a weird time, but it threw me apart for a long time. I ended up anorexic. I took Valium. They gave me bottles and bottles of it, and I had to go to court. So, of course, a week before, I took the bottles out of fear. I think it wasn't intentional. You just don't know how you're feeling. You're just fearing that court. I was 14.
Yeah, fuck. And did you have any sort of, so there was no victim support? Was there anything?
No, my mother slapped me. She was drunk when I got home and slapped me across the face. And I just had a night with the police threatening me that if I was lying, that I'd go to jail. So I was living with fear, just being raped. I was absolutely exhausted and I got slapped in the face and called a slut. And that's what hurt more than anything.
Oh.
But I don't blame her. You know what? I came to know about Mum. The adoptive whānau, we don't have contact anymore. After the abuse inquiry and I gave my evidence, I don't want to know them anymore. I told them I love them, but they're toxic and I need them out of my life.
And what happened to your uncle?
Well, he's dead. Nothing happened to him.
Right.
They didn't believe me and I wasn't going to go down that road. But with this guy, I did. And it followed through. And yes, he got 7 years. I went to sensitive claims some years later at the insistence of Dad. He was always very supportive. He was a good man, my adoptive father. He understood things that others didn't. He didn't really always
Right.
understand me. He was a conservative man. He was a National Party man, but he still encouraged me to vote. And he took me to see Rob
That's good.
Muldoon one time, and it put politics in perspective. I thought he was a big, powerful man. Now I'm short, right?
Yeah.
He walked past me. I looked at Dad and said, "He's a bloody short fella." You know, and Dad looked at me and told me to be quiet. And I just realised then that they're all very human and that they're not bigger
Mm.
than life, and that
Mm-hmm.
that he was just a man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so he got
So,
7 years. I got no rehab, no support, but I actually found his file at the same time I found mine. And he got rehabilitation, housing, everything on his release after 2 years. You know, I was never told when he was released.
wow. I thank God that's all changed now, even though obviously it's not in any
Well, it
way
has and it
perfect.
hasn't. They still
Right,
try. I
okay.
mean, they couldn't really target a 14-year-old with previous stories of looseness, of being a loose
That's
woman.
true.
And what
Yeah,
was I
that's true.
wearing? I was wearing overalls and a t-shirt and sweats. So it wasn't a mini
Right.
skirt. I had a bra
Yeah.
on, you know.
Yeah.
I wasn't immodestly dressed. It was the 70s, for goodness sake.
And they would have so gone after that.
So I was
Absolutely.
anorexic at
Right.
one point, and
Mm.
I then discovered the one thing I had control of when I was in a state of stress was eating,
Right.
and so I stopped. And
Mm.
so what happened? And I was in the psych ward at Barrett Street, New Plymouth, and we had the strangest psychiatrist. She's treating people with mental health issues, and this is a woman who was English, who walked in a fur coat with an umbrella and wellies around in summer in New Plymouth.
Right.
And she was judging us. Anyway,
Yeah, right.
about the
Okay.
day before I was released, us teenagers decided to take off. You know, teenagers being teenagers, there were a few of us there. We thought, stuff the bloody staff, we're going. So we took off, got caught, got dragged into a room, and they decided to force feed me. Broke my 2 front teeth because I refused. And I remember fainting and waking up with food in my mouth and then throwing up. Anyway, the next day
Yeah.
I was released. They said, she's just a spoilt little brat. And that was it. And I
Christ.
learnt quickly, because I'd be in and out for a while in psych wards and that, learnt very quickly to play them, which was how, you know, if I attempted suicide, I'd just to play the game, and I'd be out within 3 or 4 days, but there was no treatment. And that was a psychological game until I realised one day, many years later, that it had to stop.
Yeah. How did you get past it?
Well, of course, I had my oldest son. I had him at 18.
Yes.
He was forced adoption. He's actually now a very big, messed up man in Australia on meth, stuck in the rabbit hole, conspiracies, everything else. We talk,
Oh,
but I have to be very careful. I've got 2 beautiful grandsons to him. I love
right.
him dearly, but I didn't
Mm.
raise him. And we
Yeah.
don't,
And you
so
wanted
all I
to.
can do is say to him, I love you. And that's all
Mm.
we do. He'll talk to me about his work. He's not, I guess, he's not the brightest spark really in things, but it's his circumstance. But he'd been raised by very well off parents, but they hate me. And they've been twisting he said to me, he rang me up one day and spoke for an hour and said, you know, I want to tell them so much. I said, look, they're your parents. They raised you. I'm your mother. I gave birth to you. It's different. But I said, I'm here
Mm.
and I can be here as much as you want. He said, you know, they just don't want me talking to you. I said, don't talk to them about me. I said, it's okay.
Yeah.
Because I had the
Yeah.
same wing with me being adopted too. So I understood.
Exactly. The same thing
He
entirely.
needs help, but he won't get it. He needs that
Right.
epiphany. I got that one day. And it was that I'd attempted suicide again. And this time I was
Right.
going to be permanent. My baby son was 9 years old. He was disabled, but I wasn't thinking
Right.
about him. I put him with my cousin, who I'd since met, Marta from Taranaki, and I went off and I actually put myself in the Waikato River, and I had a bottle of alcohol and a bottle of pills, and I decided, drink it, take it down, I'm going to swim out into that water, and I can't save myself. No one can help me.
Right.
Well, I woke up on the side of the bank, and I don't. If it was a hallucination, I don't know. But people say I'm matakite, or I can talk to the tupuna. But all I remember is I got a bollocking from tupuna. Photos I later saw, so they were the same people I've never met, and I later saw those photos of them. And that was Nani, Mere, and Koro, or Matua, or Papa. what was his name, Hone. And they ripped into me and told me that Atua had another plan and that it's not to die yet and that I'm to sort myself out. And so I didn't. I woke up next in hospital. I'd been in a coma, and I looked over. For the first time, I saw my son's face. He was as white as a sheet. I made a promise to him that day. I said to him, I'll get through this. I'm not going to do this to you again. So I went out and got help, and I went to a therapist, and I said to her, I'm manipulative. I know how to play the game. I need to stop. And we spent 3 years together. I walked out more times than I stayed. My ADHD brain doesn't like challenges sometimes. And at the end of the 3 years, I looked at her one day and I said, I'm ready. And she said, yes, you are. And I haven't gone back. The tools she gave me still sit with me. If I get triggered, I don't need a therapist. I go to the temple because I'm a Buddhist, and I spend some time in meditation. If I lose it and I'm triggered, I can feel it. I have to go somewhere where I can calm the body, then calm the mind. And that's what I do.
Holy shit.
But it was then. And, of course, by that stage, medications, everything have made me fat and fatter. And I still have a body issue with that, particularly because I've got an SPC catheter fitted. So I have a permanent stoma in my stomach. And, of course, I have my fat over it. And it causes infections and things. And and I actually don't eat much. But when you're on steroids a lot, and you know with asthma, when prednisone, everything else, your appetite gets ravenous. And I become the beast where everything has to be either not brought. We now have just moved where there's a dairy 3 doors down, but I can't access it in my wheelchair, thank God. But there's a bakery next door to it, bugger. If I drunk alcohol, there's also a liquor store right next to it as well. I could be pretty set. And now there's Uber Eats. I mean, I'm in deep trouble, mate. Steroids are my demon, but I've had to come to learn to love my body. And the first part of that came when Josiah was born, my baby. To pronounce his name correctly, it's Yehoseah. And his name is that way because he was born 7.5 weeks early. I had toxemia and I went eclamptic. And I remember it because I was conscious. Now, with seizures, you're not always conscious. With eclampsia, I was. And I could hear everything and see everything, but I couldn't communicate or move because I was shaking uncontrollably. And I knew I was dying. Because the nurse came in, she bloody started crying. I'm like, and I wanted to say to her, bloody hell, I need you to be strong, not weak. And I always remember it because we just had the doctor's rounds and us girls all being heavily pregnant because we were in the National Women's Hospital with high blood pressure. We all ran down to the tuck shop, got all our food and everything else, and went running up giggling just after we'd been told that I needed bed rest because my pressure was up high. And then 10 minutes later, the girls are buzzing because all of a sudden I'm shaking in the bed and everything. And I'm wheeling down, and they had to knock me out before to theatre because it was that fast. We had 15 minutes to live.
Right.
I remember knowing I'm going to die. I can feel it. I'm okay. I'm ready. I've never been afraid of dying. But I remember also saying, well, Atua, I don't know what to believe, but if my son needs me, then let me live. And I woke up in intensive care and went, shit. I'm bloody alive. I had tubes coming out of my stomach everywhere. But my baby was a neonate. And so when they got the tubes out, I went down to see him. Now, I wear glasses. They couldn't find them. So I went to see him through the glass paneling, and I've got my blurry, short vision. And he's in this humidity crib. He was orange, tubes everywhere, and he was hairy. Because he was 7.5 weeks early, he had the down still. So I'm looking and I'm going, where is he? And they pointed to him and said, that's a bloody ape. Where's the child? So a day later, because I was expressing the milk as well on one of those mechanical pumps, felt like a bloody cow. And I'd milked cows, and I was like, oh, God, and here I am sitting here reading a magazine in one hand and going, pa-pump, pa-chung, pa-chung. It's nearly over, and I made sure he got that colostrum and the really important milk. But I went down to see him when the tubes were taken off, and the nurse said, I'm not meant to do this. But she pulled him out, wires and all, and put him against me. And he started wanting to drink. So I gave him the breast. Well, the little bugger Every 3 hours they had to wake me up 24/7 because he refused a bottle after that.
Ah.
This is my lovely gay boy who's engaged to be married, beautiful young man, and he's the one who was obsessed with my boobs.
Right.
Until at 18 months, he bit one day and I looked at him and said, that's it, last meal.
Right.
Cafe is permanently closed.
Yeah, the teeth are the thing. Once they've got their teeth.
Tell me about it.
Right. I've never had them, so I cannot.
But I never recovered from the surgery, the urgent cesarean. It took 6 months or so, and here I was with a preem baby, and I was on my own. And I remember standing outside National Women's with this baby going, shit, because Mum and Dad were disappointed. They came down to see me, and Dad said to me, I understand you're having one kid out of marriage, but two.
Wow.
This is 1980, 86.
Yeah, right.
And then I remember my best friend who was actually, I think she now heads some company here, but she was a BBC journalist, and on BBC at night I'd see her. But her mother took me in. She was 80 odd. She built her own carport while I was there, and she really got me on my feet, knowing all the basics I needed to know. If it wasn't for these type of women in my life, I don't think I would have coped.
So when did you sort of figure out your sexuality?
Wow, that was a couple of years later. Started exploring ideas, and it was a bit interesting. Wasn't sure. Then I remembered I'd been playing games with my best friend at school when I was about 10. You know, doctors and nurses, mummies and daddies, and I was always the daddy and I was always the doctor. And I'm like, oh, hang on, now I'm starting to explore. And of course, you have a couple of quick relationships and they don't pan out and you get all these emotions, and I wasn't emotionally ready at that age for any relationship really, so I wasn't very good at them. But I had my first bisexual relationship with a woman, and then she taught me a lot actually, and I didn't really understand bisexuality at that point, although I thought maybe I was because I was exploring girls, but I didn't hate boys. I never have hated boys. You know, people think we're men haters. I've got 2 sons and 2 grandsons, for goodness sake. In fact, I prefer my gay mates over lesbians, to be honest. Some of them are quite judgy. I don't know how I ever managed to be with one long term, but
Sorry, are you not married anymore?
I have a wonderful wife. But I just can't stand being around a whole bunch of them because I find them, especially with this gender critical stuff going on and, you know, this anti-trans stuff, I don't understand because they're aligning to the right and I don't get it.
Yeah.
It's not being part of also as an Indigenous woman who knows about fluid sexuality, sexual identity, I don't get why they think it's black and white. Biologically, it's not possible to be black and white gendered. Because you've got intersex people, right? Then you have hormones that vary. You've got women who I know who is hairy on their back, masculine features, have very strong testosterone, and they still identify as female. You have very feminine men who are very femme and very, you know, a bit limp-wristed in some ways, as they call it, who are straight. Then you have the variations within intersex. Genitalia is different. Some have both. Some have aspects of. Some have a very big clitoris and, you know, not quite formed as a penis. It's like, oh, you lucky girl. You know, but even with women, if you look at our vaginas and look at all of that, it's all shaped differently. Penises, they're not the same. If people think that gender is just male, female, boom, then they're not very bright because there are so many variations.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, people sort of say it's science, but science has all of these things.
Actually, it is science, and science says that gender is on a continuum.
Yeah, my uncle was intersex, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Well, this is the thing. We're not entirely sure because it was so hush-hush that I thought he was a transsexual man, but then, and I think he was intersex, but then his parents chose that he would be a woman, but then he wanting to be a man. And this was in the 50s and stuff. So this was
because they operated on them.
Absolutely.
Because I had a friend go to school called Francis, who was deep because I was at an all-girls school, Sacred Heart, and discovered she was intersex, or they were intersex, but they had been operated on, and they struggled with their identity. Committed suicide, sadly.
Oh, right.
You know,
right now we've Like we're at 37 minutes and we haven't even talked about menopause. So
I know. We might have to get onto it, eh?
Yeah, I think so.
you'll be editing all that out, won't you?
I'll be editing some of it, but no, it's all gold. But so, how did menopause start?
Menopause?
Yes.
I've always had terrible periods.
Right.
I think that's why they did the hysterectomy, that I don't know why they did.
Right.
They were doing an exploratory to find out the pain and what was going on, because I could go 3 months bleeding heavily and then not bleed for 2 months or spot the whole time, and it was never normal.
Right.
Whether, I don't know if it was endometriosis, nothing was diagnosed, and I was never told after.
Yeah. Was it painful?
Very painful.
So they did exploratory surgery to see what it was, but then just took it all out?
Yeah.
With no consent?
No. Well, the consent was if it was something to remove, but they were only going to exploratory. They didn't really talk to me. It was a form of sterilisation.
Yeah, really?
Which is illegal.
Yeah, wow.
And I spent a lot of time grieving, even though I wasn't planning to have more kids, because Yesiah was pretty traumatic.
Yeah.
I grieved the loss of the gift that Atua had given me on having 2 sons.
Did they leave ovaries in?
Yes.
Oh, good.
They did.
Right.
Yeah, they did.
That's one thing.
And they're still there.
Yeah.
So what I discovered afterwards is that if you have an early hysterectomy, chances are you will die earlier. You have a lesser lifespan. You don't live as long but keeping the ovaries in help to normalise the time frame around menopause and that.
Yep.
So I started getting hot flushes and things. Without periods, I wouldn't know. So I started getting flushes and things in my 40s.
Right.
And so they sort of said perimenopausal. So I just didn't go back to the doctor about it. We never talked about it.
Did you know what perimenopause was, or had you heard much about it?
Yes, I did.
Oh, you did? Right. Great.
Yeah. Oh, ex-nurse.
Yeah.
But I've had to explain it to other women in that.
Yeah.
And the same way I've had to explain cervical cancer to some of our disabled women and how you get it. Because in one case with one woman, when I talked to her, I said, have you ever had cervical? She goes, no, I'm safe. I'm virgin. I said, I just want to ask you then, has anyone here ever been abused as a young girl? And she looked at me, and all of a sudden I saw the light go on in her eyes. I didn't centre her out. And I said to them, you do know that you need to have the cervical screening test.
Yeah.
Because it is largely an STD. Comes from boys. And if anyone had ever abused you, it comes in other ways as well, but predominantly it comes from boys.
From HPV, yeah.
Yeah, it's the HPV, and boys have it too, or males have it too. And so I won't call them boys because abusers aren't boys, but males have it too, and they spread it. And so I said to them, you need to consider having cervical screening programs done to be screened, because that's dangerous. So, you know, a lot of disabled women actually don't know much about their bodies and how they work. Yeah. And it's really important.
Yeah. How do you reach people to teach them about menopause?
Well, I was doing sexuality workshops with disabled at conferences years ago. There's a lot more information now. I'm actually planning, because I'm retiring from research at the end of the year.
Right.
I want to focus on my art and writing. Right. And I'm doing a children's book on road safety, but I'm looking at doing a children's book and illustrating, because I'm a cartoonist, but I'm looking at illustrating a series of books, and they're done in a form of rap because kids love poetry. So I'm looking at that, but I'm thinking of doing a series of other ones, like not stranger danger, but looking after yourself, you know, how to not be abused sort of thing, and do it at children's pictures, but in a way that they will understand it.
Yeah, right.
And I'm hoping that I can do things like that, you know, do you understand your body? You know, those sort of things. Yeah. Not for children, though, but for adults with learning disabilities. Yeah. They educate them today.
Yeah, right, okay.
But most of them didn't survive into older age in the old days. Now we've got Down syndrome who are now getting dementia, old age dementia. Right. Or who are living now beyond 60, 70.
Well, great.
And that's their lifespan has improved. So the sad thing around menopause for disabled women is if you haven't got capacity, what do your parents choose for you or your guardians choose for you? And we do have a case in Aotearoa where a girl was actually made infant-like or made childlike for life through surgeries to prevent her...
Like lobotomy?
She lacks all capacity.
Right.
Can't walk, talk, do anything for herself.
Right.
But the parents were saying as she gets older, it was harder for them to care for her. So they removed her breast buds, removed her uterus, her ovaries, removed anything that could produce growth hormones so that she could stay permanently small.
Wow.
You know, like she's I think 21 now, 18 or 21, and yet she's the size of a 12-year-old and always will be. She's light, she's tiny, and easy for them to lift.
Wow.
I won't judge. I'm not going to judge the ethics that the parents have for that. They have their own reasons. They're the ones who are there, who have to raise their kids, who have to look after her for life. But I struggle with that concept because it's in direct breach of the convention. That girl, and part of the reason they do it too, and a lot of parents do it in Australia, and they actually come to New Zealand because apparently, even though it's meant to be illegal in Aotearoa, they're actually doing them here. They're getting the approval here, which came out when this girl was done.
Right.
And I don't know what's going on, but it should not be legal.
Wow. Right.
And so there are things that are done to us still, and particularly around our well-being, our rights. Some of our disabled, some of them get good health education, good birth control and good supports, and some don't. One of the biggest issues for some disabled women is menses and bleeding as the mate, as it comes through, and it's not being able to care for it and be clean and not stinking. So some have the DP injection.
Yeah, right.
And some choose to have their tubes tied as well because they don't want to have children. That's their right to choose, but no one else has that right to do it to them.
I mean, the other problem with that too is that the lack of information around menopause has been endemic until just recently. So older parents and people like that won't have probably the same information around it, and also might have more of the shame that we've all had bred into us around it as well.
And they may not even know if their child's got things like endometriosis. They may not know.
Yes.
We've got a niece who's developmentally delayed. She's a beautiful young lady, and her auntie is her carer. She does her showers and that. Very pedantic around who cares. And they are very sure that she doesn't smell or anything like that. And they use our period pants.
Oh, yep.
Which are really good.
Yep.
I love them. I've got them now too.
Right.
And I don't, not for period, but they're very good because I don't, I can't control.
Yeah, right.
So they're really good pants. And they've been working with her around her hygiene. And she'll never be able to understand it fully herself.
Right.
But with their support, that gets done. So
yeah,
that's, it's about, I think for some people, they see it as a big mess. And so if you're female and disabled, that's what they're seeing about you. They don't see you as a person. They see you as the one that's got this big mess we have to deal with every month or however.
Yeah.
And that's the sad part.
Yeah, absolutely.
But menopause can be a positive. I hate the flushes, though, the hot flushes. And with MS, where I have no body temperature control.
Oh, wow.
And heat can kill me, I found it really hard. So I started using things like portable vans. And I have them with me everywhere. I've got them in my bag. I've got them all over. Everyone laughs at me.
Do you have a
I
neck
have a power bank. Yep, got that as well.
Yeah.
And a power bank with it because I can't go anywhere, not even to meetings. Even the air conditioning can be too hot for me.
Right.
So, but I'm not as bad since I stopped the hot flushes.
Great. And did you
But
take?
The funny thing is,
sorry, yeah.
No, I didn't take. I took evening primrose oil. That was it.
Did you think about HRT?
No, because I have family history of breast cancer, and I already knew that it was a high risk, so I refused.
Yep.
I was offered it,
but
but no.
Right.
I've had 3 doses of breast cancer. My mum died with breastbone lung cancer. My sister had both breasts removed from having the BRCA gene.
Yep, right.
My nieces had it, my other sisters had it, and both of my grandmothers had it.
So this is the other thing about you finding out about your whakapapa and that you are then armed with that knowledge to be able to make decisions going forward.
It helps to.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And, of course, my wife's going through menopause right now.
Yeah, so how is that?
Through perimenopause.
Together.
Oh, my God, I keep telling you. Was I that bad? Pulls the sheets off, puts the sheets back on, a hot, cold. Oh, for goodness sake, settle down.
And has she been seeking out any different treatments or anything?
No, I keep telling it, get your bloody evening primrose oil.
Right.
Oh, I will. But she's got to be careful about meds as well, so she needs her doctor to work with her. But she hasn't gone, and I'm going, go. Please go, so that I can sleep. I feel like the husband right now because I'm not being very sympathetic. It doesn't naturally mean that a woman who's gone through it is going to be sympathetic. When my adoptive mum, when I said to her, I'm going through all these flushes, said, oh, what's the problem? It was only a short time for me. I was fine.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, thanks for the empathy, Mum.
But the thing is that that's happening a lot as well in sort of the editorial space. Like, I was fine. Why is everyone talking about it all the time? It's like, because a lot of people weren't fine. And especially if they didn't know about it. The anxiety particularly.
Humans are humans.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some women get a very hard time.
Have you known people that have?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yep, I have. And they found it really hard.
Yeah. Especially around the anxiety and stuff, I think, when you don't know what it is and you suddenly start questioning your sanity, that's the thing.
Well, I say to them it's quite sane, quite natural.
Yeah.
And it will mean that you can have as much sex as you want and not worry about, birth control one day.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, and what is it?
At the age that you're at, you might not want it anymore. Or you might want it more.
Exactly.
Don't assume older women don't like sex.
That's exactly right, because I was just talking to somebody yesterday who said exactly the same thing. So now, do you feel that you are now post-menopausal? Do you think it's all settled down?
Yeah, I don't flush as in the same, and the issues I have with my MS heat is different. So, for instance, I've been cold and Soph's got the sweats on.
Right.
So, I'm sitting there freezing and she won't put the air conditioner on because she's hot.
Yeah.
And it's the middle of winter, it's raining and it's freezing. So I put my wet bags on around me and make a big point of letting her know that it is actually cold. And maybe she'd like to go somewhere else where it's a bit colder. And I could warm myself up.
And that's the eternal struggle as well, like, in workplaces and things. That's the other thing around
Yes, I had to learn to take my fans.
Right.
I go into a board meeting at Kaingora, or no, the old housing, because I'm not on now.
Okay.
Because it became KO. And I used to take my fans with me.
Right.
And so I'd sit there with 2 fans going the whole time while I'm typing away and working.
I can't imagine that you were sort of embarrassed by it. No. Pretty open about it all?
Oh, shit, no. Yeah. Why would I be embarrassed by it? Every woman goes through it.
Absolutely.
And that's 50% of the population, roughly.
Yeah.
Kind of, if you think about it. So if the men can't handle it, that's on them.
Exactly. I love
it up, baby.
Yeah. So what positives would you say that you've had around?
I'm now actually around body image. I'm not so fussed anymore.
Right.
I think Jackie Clark, who's with the aunties, has helped me a bit with that. She's a big woman. Mm-hmm. And she works with a lot of people. She's also very in-your-face honest.
Mm-hmm. Yes, she is.
And it's kind of like, I'm fat, get over it. And I think also, what's it called? There's a group of women, larger women, who run this, the Bloom.
Don't know.
She runs a clothing thing and they have camp.
Oh, okay.
A Bloom camp, I think it's called. I can't remember exactly. But they invited me to be a speaker and I was looking at it, they're saying I'm fat. And I'm a proud fatty. And I had to question myself.
Right.
And I had to look at it differently.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because I got abused by someone over my comments. It was around, can't remember, it was one of the latest issues, around the pandemic anyway. And the guy says, well, you're fat. It's no wonder you're worried about COVID. And I looked at him and I said, well, don't judge because steroids make some of us fat.
Yeah.
But you know what I love about it being? I'm fat and in capitals and alive.
Yeah. And that's that people are so quick to judge when they don't actually know the reasons.
They don't actually understand. Obesity is one thing. And I know it's an issue because my in-laws have a huge history of that.
Oh, right.
And it comes down to trauma, poverty, loss of land, access to food that's healthy.
Yeah.
And we've been working hard, the 2 of us, to try and educate our mokos because you can't educate the nieces, nephews and that. They're on their buzz. But every time we get the mokapuna, we try and manipulate them and brainwash them into healthy kai.
Yeah.
By hiding them, blending the veggies so they can't see them, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But we grow veggies and we get them out there and show them how to grow them and let them feel the tomatoes and things. And we're trying to educate that generation.
Yeah.
But obesity is an issue. Mm. And we do a lot of workshops and we run stalls doing about healthy eating. And we're bigger women. But we do it to try and show people, it's maybe too late for us to really change. But you can do 2 generations. You can make that change. Yeah. And what we want to do is help the others to avoid what we've been through.
Yeah. I mean, and just, that the cost of healthier food is so much more than chips and Coke and all that sort of stuff. So you can see, that there's a lot more to it. Yeah.
I mean, we don't. We eat protein and veggies mainly. And our weight loss isn't, we're not losing weight because we also like a bit of Whittaker's chocolate and, the odd little snack and treat. But it's not that I don't like a lot of greasy fat. In fact, my food needs have changed and I can't eat a lot of food now. I could drown 3 burgers after a few beers, years ago, but I can't even have a burger anymore.
Right.
I can't eat them.
Right, okay.
I'm developing more and more allergies.
Right.
So my doctor and I, even the dietitians, are trying to work out what we can do to reduce some of the reactions food's giving my body now.
Right. So you feel that you've made peace with your body now?
Yeah. I'm making peace with my body.
You're not quite there yet.
I'm getting there. I think it'll be a lifelong thing.
Yeah.
But, I look at it and I look at other women. Then saw a photo of my birth mum a little while before she passed away. She went fishing over in Aussie on Aboriginal land. And it was a salmon trout she caught, which I'd never heard of, a hybrid. And she was so proud. She was a big woman.
Yeah.
And I looked at that and I thought, and I look at all the women my age and older. And, I'm 60. We go bigger when we're 60.
Right.
We have more propensity towards putting on weight. And I'm like, you know what? It's time I stopped apologising every time I have to lift my stomach for the urologist to see my catheter.
Yeah.
Or I have to lift my stomach for a doctor to see all the blisters I'm getting because I have allergies to all the material that's on those catheters and things.
Oh, right.
And I have to stop that because this is who I am.
Yep.
I'm responsible for what I put in my mouth, but I'm not responsible for the medication I'm using to keep me alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And therefore, judging me just means that it means I know what kind of person you are.
Right, okay. And I was listening to something like Alice Sneddon's Bad News, and endocrinologists talking about weight, saying that once you get into your 70s, being larger is actually better for your health. So there you go. You've just got 10 years and then...
I've got to get the 10 years. That's my first challenge.
Yeah.
So I've decided I'm going to celebrate my 60th for the next decade.
Fantastic.
Because I didn't do my party in February.
Right.
So I'm doing it when it's a bit safer, probably next February.
Excellent.
I've got Michelle A. Cork coming to be an MC, and I've got Caitlin Smith, who's a blind jazz singer.
She is, but they have both been on this podcast.
Oh, wonderful. I've got them both, and I'm going to do a marquee, I think. We're going to have a little ladies, either a high tea or something else. I might do a costume theme. I don't know. I originally wanted a drag queen's high tea.
Fantastic.
But my wife said no.
Oh.
So I turned around and I went ahead and I booked Caitlin and Michelle.
Right.
And said to the wife, right, I've done that bit. You can do the rest.
Right, okay. And your birthday is the day before my birthday.
Yes. Well, we might have to invite you to the party then. Celebrate it together.
Right, okay, fantastic. Wow. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about, particularly around disability, advocacy? I feel like if I ask you that question, we'll be here for another 3 hours.
Well, we will be here for another probably 3 days. But I guess, people judge so much. People, you notice social media, the judgment on women in particular is really hard.
It is.
And I've been getting a lot of that because I've been in the media a lot more lately. And I've even had some people tell me that so-and-so in the disability community said, oh, she's always in the media. She's so greedy. And I'm like, I don't actually approach them.
Yeah, I approached you.
They approach me.
Yeah, right.
And they approach me because I have an expertise in an area. If I feel it's more an opinion piece, I actually refer them on to other disabled.
All right.
So like Scout, who's a trans man, has been on lately. And Scout's amazing. Disabled, they have got a young daughter, and Scout's known as Papa to the young daughter. And you can see the hormones changing. You can see them masking up. And I'm going, Scout, you're looking a bit stud there, babe. And and they are doing incredibly well. But they also long COVID and struggling with a few more things. So they've been in the media lately, and it's really good to see them speaking out.
Right.
But what I don't like is the toxic way people have opinions.
Yep.
I don't try and personalise opinions with someone on any social media. I try and keep to the facts, keep to the if they start to belittle me, they say things like you're stupid or you're fat and things. And then I go back and I go, oh, my God. Am I stupid? Because, the demons
there.
come up.
Oh, my God, look at all your degrees and things.
So the trigger. So I've actually been learning that it's actually their issue, not mine. And so I push through. I don't care. If the media if I believe that issue is important to talk to, I will talk to it. I don't like being in the media. And I'll say that right now. I don't even watch the interviews. I hate looking at myself, hate thing. And it's quite funny because I did a TikTok one recently around COVID.
Yeah.
With Pairama Right on TikTok. And it was a boil up. It's the Te Puni Kokiri. Got a few influencers to do them. I've never done a boil up. So my Kira's doing the brisket boil up because I don't do pork. And I'm sitting there and I'm pretending, all this. And I had a ball doing it. But, it was great. But that was probably the one I watched. But I don't tend to watch them or read the articles back because I know I won't read comments anymore.
Wise.
Because otherwise it brings you down.
Yeah, it really does.
I don't need that.
Yeah.
And no one does. But I do, like, at the moment with the Iranian situation, with the hijab, where the woman was killed by the morality police.
Yes.
I thought immediately of a goal res.
Yeah.
And I know she gets a lot of hate.
She does. Yep.
Because we've connected over the MS issue.
Yeah.
I messaged her last night and she was blown away because she said, "You thought of me?" And I said, "Yes, because I know this is going to be really painful. And I also know you're going to get hate.
Yeah.
And I want you to protect yourself and lock your account for a few days."
Right, okay.
And I was just trying to warn her, really. But she really appreciated the fact that someone cared enough to private message and say to her, and she said to me, 30 years of pain watching that regime bring down her people.
Yeah.
We need to be more human towards each other. And wahine, we don't need women. We should not be pulling each other down. And by the way, trans women, trans rights. Trans rights are human rights. Trans women are women.
Fantastic.
It's my position and I won't change it. And it's an indigenous-based position based on the fact that my ancestors from all of my past cultures, all my whakapapa, all of them had multiple genders within their cultures.
Totally.
My Navajo culture, we call them the two-spirit people.
I was about to say that, yes. Yep.
Other cultures have many genders. In some Indian cultures, they have like 8 different genders.
Right.
There is such a variation. All we've got in that argument of turfism or trans issues is the Western thinking, Christian Western thinking. If we were to look at all the cultures, you would find gender was defined quite differently.
Yep, absolutely.
I guess that's the last bit I'd like to say.
Fantastic. Did you have a fun fact at all for us, an out-of-the-box fun fact?
Fun fact, that the real Doctor Who was always a woman, or non-binary actually.
Really?
Yeah,
I never watched
and that the first one they portrayed on TV, they portrayed her as a Pākehā with blue eyes and blonde hair. Come on. Do I look like her?
They should have got
Honestly.
you. Should have got you.
I'm going to be a black man next time it's aired.
Right.
I'm looking forward to that episode.
So you are Doctor Who. That's it. You are.
I am Doctor Who. The Tardis looks bigger on the inside. That's my wheelchair now. I managed to reshape it. It fits a lot inside it. The Tardis has always been bigger on the inside.
TARDIS. Have you painted it blue?
It's purple, thank you very much.
Sorry, right, okay, good. Right.
Oh, yeah, Doctor Who's non-binary, remember?
Okay, good, right. Well, I think that's a wonderful place to end this after an hour of chatting. Thank you so much for your time. No, it's great. It's great. It's fucking great. And I just want to say that thank you very much for talking about some stuff that's pretty full on. I mean, you seem to have gotten to a place of being able to process all that. But that is, I mean, you have been through so very much, which is why this whole
It takes a lot of work.
abuse, and this abuse and care thing is so important to reveal it. Just the capacity that humans have for being utter fuckwits to each other. Actually, I always think I'm ready for it, and then I'm more amazed by, and then the resiliency that you've shown.
I have seen fuckwits do complete 180s.
Oh, great.
And I've actually done that with some.
Great.
Where we've sat one-on-one and we have actually found common ground and then we've started to connect.
Right. Well done.
Never write them off.
Right, okay. Well, that considering what you've been through, that's amazing. So anyway, kia kaha, keep fighting the good fight. Lovely to see your face. And I might see you at your birthday party.
Well, stay in touch.
I'll remember your birthday anyway. But okay, good. Okay, bye-bye.
Well, how can I forget yours? You're a birthday cousin here, twin of you almost.
That's right. Okay, I'll see you later.
Mate wa.
So that was the personification of the word resilient, Dr. Huhana Hickey. What she has been through in her 60 years makes someone like me realize how deeply sheltered from a lot of life's injustices I have been. And hearing a story like hers can only invoke further empathy, I think. So I think we should all hear stories like this. And, here's to her and everyone else navigating through life's traumas. May you have your own Tardis and support network and get to that same, stillness, conviction, acceptance, however long that journey is. So kia kaha. So now to something completely different. It's been a while, but here's another bitsflash for VNN Vulva News Network. So as the amitriptyline seemed to have been wearing off and my vulval burning was getting worse, I decided to try something that the very notion of, when I first heard of it, confronted the hell out of me, which is pelvic floor physio. I made an appointment with Jamie Thomas and Tiatatū Physio, and I went on Wednesday having absolutely no idea what to expect. I thought I was going to get some stretching exercises, and I did, but I also had Jamie's hand in my pelvic floor, aka Fanny, for about half an hour as she moved about, pressing on various tight areas of my pelvic floor, which was referring pain to my bits and especially to the front of my leg. But what the fuck? I have been told I have a tight pelvic floor before, usually in breathy congratulatory terms. Yes, I mean sex. But this was definitely a new one. I am therefore to do similar exercises myself at home and even brought something called a TheraWand, which is basically the shape of a large crank that I'll wind up my vagina with and drive about with it. No, it's about releasing tightness in my sacred lady space and basically the opposite of Kegels. It's only been a couple of days, but I actually do think maybe I can feel a difference, literally. Hopefully this isn't some placebo effect, but I am also weaning off the drugs as they dried up my voice a bit, and I open tonight at Centrepoint in frigid Palmerston North. You can potentially hear the gales outside the window right now. It's bloody freezing. But I'm on to October the 9th at Centrepoint with Olive Copperbottom. So come and see me and my loosening portal in action. It's like Doctor Who, a portal to a different place. Okay, till next time, Showy Ovarians. Stay juicy. Oh, and some more tickets for Showy Ovaries Live in Nelson have been released because they fixed some flood damage. So get on those while you can before they sell out again. Until then, ka kite. Ciao.